This is getting out of hand. Now there are 2 of them.
We should not have made this bargain.
Welcome back to the channel. This is episode 44 of Brett on Fett. And for the past couple of months, Hasbro's been running their Bring Home the Galaxy campaign, where they reveal new products leading up to the holidays. And it's been a pretty up and down ride as far as what's been revealed and the reactions from most collectors. And Hasbro wrapped up their Bring Home the Galaxy campaign this past week with a few reveals for both the Vintage Collection and the Black Series. Now in this episode, I really just want to focus on a few of the repaint reveals from the Vintage Collection, namely the Boba Fett figures. We got 3 of them, and the arctrooper figures, which we also got 3 of over the course of this campaign. And like most Star Wars action figure reveals these days, it was not without its share of controversy and polarization amongst collectors. So I just want to go over my thoughts on these reveals, so let's take a look at them. Now I want to start with the arctroopers, and before we get into this, I just want to preface by saying I am a huge arctrooper fan. They are my favorite clones. I do like the molds Hasbro has for the arctroopers. I've really enjoyed these figures. And on top of that, ever since Hasbro started putting out the 501st arctroopers, Jesse, Echo, and Fives, I've been wanting the Rancor battalion. I've been wanting Havoc, Blitz, and Colt. So I'm definitely going to have a bias here when talking about these repaints because I wanted this. I asked for this and I'm excited for it. And so the first reveal of this latest ArcTrooper trio was Arc Commander Havoc. They announced him back in November at the start of Bring Home the Galaxy campaign, and he looks great. I like the card back. I'm probably least excited about him of the 3 simply because he's blue and he looks similar to the 501st guys we've already gotten. But other than that, I was very excited to see this reveal because I had a feeling it meant that Colt and Blitz were also coming. After Havoc, Hasbro announced Arc Commander Colt, and he is a very popular character. His previous action figure is very expensive on the secondary market, so very cool to have him. I love his color scheme, and it's just a really cool figure. The card back looks great. The figure looks awesome as well. And finally, this past week, on the last day of the Bring Home the Galaxy campaign, Hasbro announced Arc Commander Blitz. And he may be my favorite design of the 3 figures. The card back is okay. It's kind of dark and bland. But look at this guy. His design is awesome with that yellow striping. And his diamonds on the comma skirt looks really good. So very excited about Blitz. Now with this latest announcement of Arc Commander Blitz, that now makes 9 figures Hasbro has reused the same ArcTrooper mold for. That's 9 repaints, and that is quite a lot. And as happy as I am to get the Rancor Battalion trio, I have to admit 9 does seem a bit excessive, especially if you're somebody that is not into ArcTroopers as much as I am. Again, I'm biased. I'm happy with them because I love them so much. I'll take these ArcTroopers any day, as long as they switch up the design a little bit. It's not just switching out the color, for example. And in most cases, these do exhibit some differences other than just the color. So I'm okay with it, but I understand if some collectors are getting frustrated by this practice. And that all being said, I do think with this latest release of the Rancor trio, Hasbro should go ahead and retire this particular mold. Let's take a break from the ArcTroopers for a bit and move on and look forward to using newer molds, you know, maybe something based off the new upcoming Phase 2 Clone Trooper mold, for example. And before we move on, I just want to mention that at least most of these repaints were retailer exclusives. The 3 Gaming Greats figures were fan channel exclusives and a GameStop exclusive. And then these latest 3 from Rancor Battalion are all Walmart exclusive, and that's what they should be. The repaints should be exclusive figures because, as Hasbro said many times, these are bonus figures that would not be made otherwise. And to me, that's the appropriate treatment of exclusives, is use repaints and redos of figures. And so it's really not a big deal to me. It's not taking away from mainline figure inventory. So I'm okay with this when Hasbro does it this way, and I'll get into another point about that in a minute when we talk about the Boba Fetts. So over the course of the Bring Home the Galaxy campaign, in addition to getting 3 new arctroopers announced, we got 3 new Boba Fetts announced. And I think it goes without saying, guys, that I also have a bias with Boba Fett. He is my favorite character. He is my focus character when it comes to collecting. So obviously I'm going to be happy when I see Boba Fett's being released. So the first new version revealed way back in November is the original Kenner Colors Boba Fett. I already covered this on a previous episode, so I'm not going to talk about it too much here. But just again, I'm very excited about this one. This is probably my favorite of the 3. And then this past week, on the last day of Bring Home the Galaxy, we got 2 versions of Boba Fett on the same day revealed, starting with this vintage comic art Boba Fett. Man, this is a fantastic card back. It uses an image basically from the first comic book Boba Fett appeared in, Star Wars number 42. And he's painted in that same deco from the comic book. And this is from 1978. And at first I was kind of so-so on the green because it's just so much green on him. But man, I just love his helmet and the little purple trim. And his jetpack looks awesome, so he's really growing on me. You know, at first it was all about the card back, but I've actually really liking the figure as well. And I just think it's a really cool idea to put that comic book art on a vintage style card. And then the second reveal was another comic book one, but this was a more modern comic book. It's from Boba Fett, Death, Lies, and Treachery. And I was really surprised that they used the actual font from the comic in the name chase, and I'm not against it. I don't have any issues with it. I was just really surprised they matched the source material with this font because it's such a casual font compared to what we normally see in the vintage collection. So I don't like the art used for this one as nearly as much as the other one, but the paint job on the figure itself is still very cool with that purple mixed in there on his helmet, his shoes, the gun. It's just a really cool looking Fett. There's no way around it. It's an awesome looking paint job on this guy. Now I do want to bring to your attention that these are not the first comic book version of Boba Fett we have seen in 3 3/4 scale. So let's take a look at what we got before. So here is a previous comic book version of Boba Fett we got. This is back in 2008 from the 30th anniversary line. Came in this comic 2-pack. Featuring Boba Fett and an RA7 droid. Now this is actually not the first time we got a comic book Boba Fett. The first one came in 1996 with the Shadows of the Empire comic 2-packs. They put out a couple of these. This one came with Boba Fett versus IG-88. And the figure was just not very good in this one in my opinion. And taking a closer look at the figure set, this is from the Star Wars number 81 comic book. And there you can see you've got Boba Fett and an RA7 droid. And the Boba Fett colors are looking closer to the Empire Strikes Back colors. The comic book it's based on here is from 1984 versus that vintage comic the brand new Hasbro figure is based on is from 1978. So at this time we've already had all the movies with Boba Fett, and so I guess that started influencing the colors used in the comics by then. And taking a look at the back, you've got some nice images taken from the comic book itself. And there is a summary of what's going on that issue, which you can pause and read if you'd like to. And you got a nice little picture of the 2 figures that come in the pack, and then the rest of that comic 2-pack wave. Now these are really cool sets that Hasbro did back in the day, having the combination of the comic book with the figures. But as primarily a traditional carded figure collector, I much prefer what Hasbro is choosing to do now by having a regular TVC card with the comic book art on it. Now going back to these latest Boba Fett variants that have been revealed recently, like I was saying with the arctroopers, these are all retail exclusives. All 3 of these are Target exclusives, and this is exactly how repaints should be used. As long as they are exclusives and they are not taking away from the mainline figures, I don't have a problem with this. Now what I do still have a problem with when it comes to these Boba Fett figures is the price. These went on pre-order for $22.99 each. Those are Black Series prices. And we've talked about it on my channel before, the Boba Fett tax is real. It's not a joke. They won't admit to it. They'll say it's all about extra paint decos and that sort of thing, but we've gotten the same amount of decos on some Mandalorian figures, for example, and so we know it has to do with the character and how well he sells. Now, there may be a silver lining with these ridiculous prices here, and that is because I have to believe with these repaints for popular figures like Boba Fett, where they're jacking up the price, Hasbro is trying to maximize their profits so they can use that additional money to fund newly tooled figures for the main line. I just have to believe that, and that's the thing that keeps me going, that keeps me dishing out money for these figures I love when I know the prices are going way too high. And if that is indeed their strategy, I just hope it does not backfire on them and result in people just saying enough is enough, we're not going to buy these, and it just kind of results in ending the budget for the line. Alright, now it's time for another edition of Random Figure Spotlight, where I choose a figure at random, usually from one of the modern lines that are older than the Vintage Collection or the Black Series, and we go over the character and take a closer look at the figure. And for today's edition, I have chosen Commander Fox from the Clone Wars 2008. Now, there have been 3 total figures put out for Commander Fox by Hasbro, starting with this one, the 2008 Commander Fox Phase 1. Then later on in the 2012 Clone Wars series of figures, Hasbro put out a Phase 2 Commander Fox from the Clone Wars. And then finally, Hasbro put out a Phase 2 Commander Fox for the Black Series. But again, for today, we're going to focus on that Phase 1 Commander Fox, the very first one that came out in 2008, under that Clone Wars packaging. But before we take a look at the figure, let's briefly go over who Commander Fox was. So Clone Commander Fox, whose official designation was CC-1010, was the clone commander of the Coruscantguard, an elite corps of shock troopers who served to protect the Republic's capital planet of Coruscant during the Clone Wars. The Coruscantguard also acted as a military police force and security force in various capacities. As part of these duties, Fox and his shock troopers served to protect Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, as well as supplementing the Senate Guard by helping to protect members of the Galactic Senate. Although mostly stationed on Coruscant, occasionally Fox and his troops would go on off-world missions to provide security for Jedi ambassadors and Republic senators. Perhaps Fox is most famous on the Clone Wars series for being the clone that killed Clonetrooper 5s while attempting to apprehend 5s, who was framed for attacking Palpatine in an attempt to keep him quiet about Order 66. Following the Clone Wars and Order 66, Fox remained commander of the Coruscant Guard, but not long after the start of the Empire, Fox led a security team to surround the Jedi Temple while Darth Vader attempted to capture Jedi Master Jocasta Nu. However, during the event, Fox's shock troopers mistook Vader as a Jedi and tried to kill him, and for that mistake, Vader executed Fox. Alright, let's take a look at the figure itself. Here is Commander Fox from the 2008 The Clone Wars line. This is the first line of action figures based on the Dave Filoni 3D animated Clone Wars. You can see this one is a Target exclusive. And there's a look at the image of Fox taken directly from the show, looking pretty cool. And this, of course, is an animated line. So like the characters, the molds are based on their animated versions. And I think they really nailed it with Fox. And the best part about this figure, in my opinion, is the paint job on his chest, the insignia on his chest. I just think it looks awesome. But I really love the color scheme. I think it really works on this figure. And I actually prefer the Phase 1 version, mainly because of his insignia on his chest, but also the helmet. I think his helmet looks awesome. And you see he's got that antenna on his side. That is not like a rangefinder. It's just kind of like an antenna. But it looks really good. And flipping over to the back, you got a nice image of Fox and his Coruscant Guard accompanying him. And you can pause the video here if you want to read that description. And then looking down here, you've got the rest of that wave from the Clone Wars animated series. This was the first wave of the Dave Filoni animated style figures. But overall, great looking package and awesome figure. This is probably my favorite figure from the 3D animated Clone Wars line. I really like it, and man, I would just love for Hasbro to remake this guy in the Vintage Collection, although I would want him on this Phase 1 style Fox. However, I have a feeling if they do ever remake Fox for the Vintage Collection, it would probably be on a Phase 2 body, given that Hasbro has an all-new Phase 2 clone mold coming out. So they're going to want to be making use of that as much as possible. Alright, that's going to do it for this episode of Brett on Fett. Now please note, next weekend is Christmas, and since I make my videos on the weekend, I very likely will not be putting out a new episode next week. But if I do put something out, it may be a compilation of moments throughout the year, that being my first year of my YouTube channel, so be on the lookout for that. Thanks for watching. As always, thank you so much to my subscribers. If I don't see you next week, please have a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and stay safe. Take care, and we'll see you next time.